Kira's claws trembled as she stepped off the broken escape pod. Smoke rose behind her, thick and choking, and the red sky above rumbled like something alive. This place wasn't listed on any star maps, but her ship had crashed here after taking heavy fire from pirate drones. The emergency beacon was broken, food was gone, and the air had a heavy scent of rot and wet earth. Still, that wasn't the worst part. Kira wasn't alone. Something massive moved between the black trees. She wasn't sure what it was, but the vibrations in the soil were enough to make her knees weaken. "Hello?" she called, her translator flickering weakly. No answer, but deep in the trees, something growled. Low and hungry, this was Gravenfor, a forbidden jungle world known only by whispers. A planet where apex predators ruled, where no one came back alive, not even trained military squads. Kira's people were peaceful researchers, not fighters. She wasn't trained for this. She wasn't ready, but it didn't matter anymore. She turned and ran, leaves slicing at her skin. Roots grabbing her feet, the growl behind her grew louder. Closer, deeper, she tripped, landing hard in the mud, her arm twisting under her. Pain shooting up her side, branches above her snapped. The creature was coming, and it was fast. She looked up, gasping. Heart pounding, then froze. A shadow stepped between her and the beast. A man, a human. He wore a dark jacket, torn at the sleeves, and carried nothing but a long metal rod in one hand. The predator leaped from the trees. A monster of claws, teeth, and thick plated armor. Kira screamed, expecting the man to be ripped in half. But what happened next didn't make sense. The human didn't move, not at first. He waited until the creature was midair, jaws wide, then he stepped forward. One hand gripped the beast's lower jaw. The other slammed the rod through its open throat. Blood sprayed the trees like black paint. The predator collapsed at his feet, twitching, broken. The human pulled his rod free, now bent and soaked, and turned slowly toward Kira. "You hurt?" he asked, voice calm. Kira didn't answer. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her eyes stayed locked on the crushed predator, its body still steaming. The man crouched beside her and extended a hand. "You'll need to get up if you want to live," he said. "This jungle doesn't rest." She took his hand, more out of fear than trust, and he helped her up with surprising gentleness. What are you?" she finally asked, her voice shaking. The man looked at her, puzzled. "Human." He said simply, "Name's Reese." That night, they sat by a small fire, hidden under a thick stone overhang. Kira barely ate, her eyes still wide from what she'd witnessed. "How are you alive here?" she whispered. "This world eats everyone." Reese tossed a small chunk of roasted meat into his mouth and chewed slowly. "Not everyone," he replied. "I'm not like the others who came here." Kira frowned. "But you don't have armor, or tech, or even a weapon." He smiled. "Sometimes, all you need is your hands and a reason." "A reason for what?" she asked. "To fight," he said. "To survive." The fire crackled between them, filling the silence. Kira looked at him closely now, studying his movements, his calm breath, his scars. There was something in his eyes, something ancient, not cold, not cruel, just unbreakable. She hugged her knees and whispered, "I thought humans were extinct." He chuckled softly. "Not yet." The wind outside howled again, and something distant let out a roar. Reese didn't even flinch. He looked toward the jungle like he was listening to an old song. Kira shivered. "What do we do now?" "We survive," he said, "together and for the first time since crashing." Kira felt a strange feeling inside her. Not safety, not yet, but something close. Hope. Kira couldn't sleep that night. The fire gave off soft heat, and the man resat with his back against the stone wall. Sharpening a broken metal piece with a flat rock, he didn't speak much, but when he did, his words were clear, slow, and calm. Kira watched him closely. Unsure whether to trust him or fear him, he had killed a fully grown apex predator with nothing but a rod and his bare hands. That kind of strength didn't make sense, and yet, his face. It didn't show anger or pride, only quiet focus. "You should sleep," Reese said without looking at her. "I can't," Kira admitted, hugging her knees tighter. "Too loud out there, it's always loud on this planet," he replied. "Noise doesn't mean danger, not always." He placed the sharpened metal next to him and picked up a flat piece of bone, started carving grooves into it like it was a daily habit. "You live here?" she asked, voice low. "Survive here," he corrected. "There's a difference." She nodded slowly, then hesitated before asking, "Why?" Reese paused, letting her question hang in the air. "Because I was left behind," he said finally. "By people who thought I wouldn't make it." Kira stared, unsure what to say. "They thought this jungle would tear me apart," he continued, "but they forgot one thing: humans adapt." He said it without pride, like a simple fact of nature. Kira leaned forward. "But no human I've ever seen could do what you did." Reese shrugged. "We get stronger when we have no choice." His voice was soft to soft for someone who could tear beasts apart. But it was that softness that scared her more than shouting ever could. It meant he wasn't trying to show off. It meant his strength was real. "You're not scared?" she whispered. "I am," he said simply. "But fear is fuel." Suddenly, a distant scream echoed through the trees, sharp and chilling. Kira tensed, her claws ready to grab the nearest rock, but Reese stayed still, listening. "That's not a predator," he murmured. "That's someone else." Kira blinked. "Someone else?" "There are others." "There were," he said, standing up, "but that voice. It's not from my group." He lifted the sharpened rod and a curved bone blade, both made from fallen creatures. Kira stood too, unsure what to do. "You're going out there?" He nodded. "Someone's in trouble. You don't even know them," she said, confused. "I don't have to." He replied, "If someone screams for help, and I ignore it, I'm no better than the monsters out there." Kira hesitated, then followed him. They walked through the thick jungle, vines hanging like ropes and glowing insects buzzing in the air. Every sound felt closer, sharper, and yet Reese moved with steady steps, like he'd memorized the terrain. Kira struggled to keep up, her feet slipping in the damp mud. "How long have you been here?" she asked breathlessly. Reese didn't answer for a moment, then said, "Long enough to forget what silence sounds like." Then they saw her, a small alien girl, trapped inside a net woven from living roots. She screamed again as something with too many legs crawled closer, drooling from its needle-like mouth. Kira froze, but Reese didn't. In 3 quick steps, he was between the creature and the girl. The creature lunged and Reese moved. Not fast, not panicked, but precise. He spun low, cutting one leg clean off, then slammed the sharpened rod through its eye. It didn't even get a second scream. Kira watched in stunned silence as Reese tore the net open, lifted the girl gently, and carried her back through the trees. Back at the cave, Kira helped feed the girl drops of water. "She's from the Valari tribes," Kira whispered. "They never leave their planets." "What is she doing here?" Reese didn't answer right away, just stared into the fire. "Maybe like you," he said finally. She crash-landed, ran, and screamed loud enough for the jungle to hear her. Kira looked at the sleeping child and then at the man beside her. He spoke softly, walked carefully, and smiled kindly, yet he was more deadly than anything she had ever known. "Reese," she said, "what are you really?" He glanced at her, then at the stars barely visible through the tree canopy. "I'm human," he said again, "but I think the galaxy's forgotten what that really means." Kira sat near the fire, legs pulled close to her chest, her eyes fixed on Reese as he gently placed a wet cloth on the alien child's forehead. The girl, barely conscious, let out a soft breath, safe now because of him, but Kira couldn't relax. Her mind wouldn't stop asking the same question. What is this man? Not a soldier, not a mercenary, not even a trained survivalist, just a human. And yet, he moved like a weapon. She reached into her pouch and pulled out a small, half-functional bioscanner. It was old tech, meant for cataloging plant life, but it could scan life forms too. She aimed it carefully, while Reese sat with his back to her. The scan buzzed quietly, and a soft green light flashed across the screen. Species, human, class, non-modified, threat level. Variable, the screen read. But then the text shifted. Warning, data incomplete. Subject history indicates extreme adaptability, unpredictable aggression under pressure, and recorded events of planetary impact. Kira frowned and scrolled further. Known galactic incidents. Terran conflict. Siege of Argus 3, the Chain Wars. She paused, her heart racing. She had heard those names before in old warnings. In whispers between elders, they were stories used to scare young ones into behaving. Stories of the race that didn't break easily, didn't surrender, didn't stop, until they either won nor died. Stories of humans. Kira looked up from the scanner, her hands cold. Reese was gently feeding the alien girl a spoonful of root broth. He looked so calm, so kind, yet the history behind him was soaked in blood and survival. Kira swallowed hard and tucked the scanner away. "Do you know what they say about your kind?" she asked quietly. Reese raised an eyebrow. "Probably a lot of things." She nodded. "They say humans don't fear death. They invite it just to prove they can beat it." He smiled faintly. "Not true," he said. "We fear death like anyone else. We just don't let it stop us." That answer didn't calm her, it made her even more uneasy. Because it sounded like truth, she decided to ask the question she'd been holding since the moment he ripped apart that predator. "Why didn't you run?" she whispered. "That thing. It was huge, fast, deadly. And you didn't even flinch." Reese leaned back, the firelight casting soft shadows across his tired face. "I used to run," he said, "a long time ago." He didn't look at her, just stared into the flames. "I ran when my team got ambushed. Ran when my ship got hit. Ran when I saw my friend get torn in half." He continued. "But one day, I turned around and fought." Kira sat quietly, listening as the jungle wind hissed softly through the trees. "I don't fight because I'm strong," Reese added. "I fight because if I don't, others die." The alien child stirred beside him, curling closer into his side like she knew he was safe. Kira watched her thoughts a storm. She had always thought strength came from power, armor, or training. But this man was something else. He didn't have superior genes or advanced tech. He had will, and will was terrifying when it didn't break. Later that night, while Reese checked traps, Kira took the scanner again. She entered a direct query. "How many species fear humans?" The screen blinked, then replied, "Majority of known predator species avoid human targets unless starving or desperate." She asked again, "Why?" The answer came slowly, like the scanner itself was unsure how to word it. "Due to humans. Unpredictability, emotional triggers, and high pain tolerance. Risk is considered extreme." Kira turned it off, shaken. She wasn't sure whether to feel safer or more afraid when Reese returned, carrying 2 skinned small creatures and a fistful of glowing fruit. Kira stood up. "Reese," she said, "I think the galaxy fears you." He glanced at her and dropped the food near the fire. Good, he replied softly. Then maybe it'll leave us alone. Kira stared at him, feeling something strange in her chest. Not fear, not yet trust, but respect. A kind that didn't come from rank or title, but from watching someone walk through death and keep going. That night, she lay beside the child and whispered to herself, "He's not from a warrior race." She thought, "He's worse. He's human." The jungle was quiet. Too quiet. Kira stood just outside the cave, listening. Eyes scanning the dark tree line. Even the insects had stopped making noise. That was never a good sign. Reese stepped beside her, carrying a sack of sharpened bone tools, his face calm but focused. "Something's wrong," Kira said in a low voice. Reese nodded slowly. "We're being watched." He looked up toward the thick canopy where flickers of light danced to steady. Too timed, not natural. Kira reached for her scanner, then froze. The signal wasn't coming from predators. It was from people. Just then, a net shot out from the shadows, wrapping tight around Kira's legs and yanking her to the ground. She screamed as her claws tried to tear the ropes. But they were made from living vine stite, strong, unbreakable. From the trees dropped 6 tall, dark-skinned alien warriors, their armor painted in jungle colors, their eyes glowing with a dull green light. "Outsiders," one growled, stepping forward with a bladed spear. "You're trespassing in sacred land." Reese didn't even move, didn't even raise his voice. "She's injured," he said simply. "She's no threat." The warrior laughed. "She will be sold. And you, whatever you are, will die." Another warrior stepped forward and jabbed a spear at Reese's chest. It didn't pierce. The spear bent slightly, like it had hit stone. The warrior stepped back, confused, but it was too late. Reese moved, fast, fluid, silent. One moment he stood still. The next he had broken the spear in half, spun, and slammed the jagged tip into the warrior's shoulder. The jungle exploded in motion. The other hunters rushed in, but Reese was already inside their guard. He dropped one with a kick that cracked ribs, flipped another with a punch to the throat, and rolled over Kira to cut her loose mid-fight. The last warrior tried to flee, but Reese grabbed his arm and pulled him down like a rag doll. Within seconds, all 6 warriors were groaning on the ground, weapons scattered like twigs. Kira stared in shock, barely able to sit up. You didn't kill them," she whispered. Reese crouched beside one of the hunters and whispered something too quiet to hear, then stood. "They won't come back," he said, wiping his hands calmly. "How can you be so sure?" she asked. "Because I gave them a choice," he said. "Leave or come back and die." Kira looked at the warriors limping away into the trees and believed every word. Later, when they returned to the cave, Kira watched Reese as he cleaned his makeshift blades. "You fight like an animal," she said softly, "but you think like a soldier." Reese didn't look up. "I fight like someone who's tired of watching people get taken." She sat beside him, her voice quieter now. "You knew they weren't just hunters. They were slavers." He nodded. "They wore the red bones on their belt slaver mark." Kira shook her head. "You risked your life for me." Reese glanced at her. "I told you, Kira. I don't like bullies." Suddenly, the small alien girl they'd rescued earlier tugged on Reese's sleeve, eyes wide with fear. She pointed toward the cave entrance and whispered a single word in her tongue. Queen Reese stood slowly, grabbing his sharpened rod and bone knife. "What did she say?" he asked. Kira's voice cracked, the Queen of Fangs. "She's coming." Reese didn't react with fear, not even surprise. He simply turned to the dark jungle and muttered, "Good." Kira blinked, confused. "You want her to come?" He nodded once, slow and steady. "I've been waiting," he said. "She's the one they all run from, the one who controls the predators, the land, the fear." Kira backed away slightly. Reese. She's massive, bigger than anything you've faced before. Reese smiled softly. Then I'll hit harder. That night, Kira watched him from the edge of sleep, her body sore, her mind racing. The jungle feared this queen, this creature, that ruled the darkness. But Reese wasn't afraid. Because unlike everyone else who tried to survive here, he had become the hunter, and now the real fight was about to begin. The earth trembled with every step she took. Far in the distance, the trees parted unnaturally. Not from wind, but from something forcing them apart. The Queen of Fangs was awake, and she was hunting. Kira crouched beside Reese on the cliff's edge, staring down at the ruined remains of an ancient camp below, crushed shelters, blood-stained stones, and bones picked clean all fresh. She swallowed hard, her claws digging into the dirt. She destroyed everything. Reese said nothing, his eyes fixed on the trail of broken trees leading north. She's not just big, Kira whispered, she's smart. And angry, Reese stood slowly, adjusted the cloth around his fists, and turned back toward the cave. We've got 2 days at most, he said. She followed the scent of blood. Kira followed him nervously, her heart pounding. You fought monsters. But this is different, Reese. This is her jungle. He glanced over his shoulder, calm as ever. That's why I'm ending it, that night. Reese prepared like he was going to war. He carved fresh spears from the bones of the predator he killed earlier, reinforced them. With alien metal, he scavenged from Kira's escape pod. He painted strange lines on his arms, using crushed Glaruda human ritual. He said, for focus. Kira watched him from the corner of the cave, her arms wrapped around the little alien girl who still refused to speak. She's coming for you, you know? Kira said quietly. You killed one of her offspring. No, Reese said, pressing a rock blade to a stick, twisting it tighter. That's the only reason she's not hunting at random. She's furious, Kira added. The jungle listens to her. Obeys her, Reese gave a slow nod. Then I'll teach the jungle what it means to fight back. By sunrise, the sky had turned a deep orange. The first signs of her arrival were already visible, birds flying away in massive flocks, vines tightening. And curling away from the open paths, Kira saw the first ripple of leaves fall far to the west. Then a loud roar echoed so hard it shook the walls of their cave. Reese stepped outside, lifted a bone spear, and stared toward the sound. The little girl whimpered, covering her ears. Kira rushed to her and whispered, It's okay. He's going to protect us. But even she wasn't sure anymore. Hours passed, then silence. Not a peaceful silence, but the kind that made your skin crawl. Reese stood alone in the clearing now, shirtless, with bandages wrapped around his ribs and arms, his back marked with fresh paint. He'd laid traps, deep pits lined with metal shards, smoke bombs from boiled bark, and spike vines along narrow trails. Kira stayed hidden in the trees, clutching her scanner tightly, watching him with wide eyes. Then she arrived. The trees groaned and split open as the queen stepped into view. She stood 3 times taller than Reese, her body covered in scaled armor, her jaw split into 4 parts filled with razored teeth. But her eyes, they burned with focused rage. The queen let out a deafening shriek. And every animal within a mile fled into the skies. Reese didn't move. He simply said, You're big. Then he charged. Kira gasped. No. The queen lunged, tail whipping, claws slashing the air. Reese ducked, rolled under her, and jabbed a spear into the soft joint behind her knee. She roared, spun, and slammed him with her tail, sending him flying into a tree. Kira screamed, covering her mouth, thinking it was over, but he stood again. Slowly, painfully, but he stood. Blood ran down his face, but his eyes were clear. He threw another spear, this one tipped with glowing insect sac sand, It exploded against the queen's chest. She roared, stunned by the light, giving Rhys just enough time to leap forward and stab his final bone blade deep into her eye. The queen flailed, smashing trees, tearing the jungle apart in her panic. Rhys dodged each strike, moving like water, until finally she collapsed. Her breathing slowed, her chest heaved, and her 4 eyes rolled back. Rhys stood above her chest, rising and falling, his body shaking but victorious. Kira ran to him, her voice breaking. "You did it. You killed her." He fell to his knees, gripping the earth to keep from falling over. "She was strong," he whispered, "but she bled like anything else." The jungle around them was still now. For the first time in days, no screams, no shaking. Trees. No more fear. Kira dropped beside him and said through tears, "You weren't just fighting her, were you?" Rhys looked at her with tired eyes. "I was fighting what she stood for." Asterisk smoke rose from the torn earth. Trees lay shattered across the jungle floor. Now the air smelled like blood, burnt, sap, and victory. But Kira didn't feel safe. Not yet. Rhys stood with one knee on the queen's chest, her massive body still twitching as faint pulses ran through her limbs. "She's down," Kira said breathlessly, stepping over broken branches to reach him. "She's not moving." Rhys didn't answer, his eyes locked on the queen's body. His breath was shallow, his knuckles bleeding, his muscles tight with tension. "Kira," he said softly, "back away." She froze. "Why?" Then she saw the queen's body twitched again, but not like before. This wasn't death spasms. This was resistance. From deep beneath her armored chest, something glowed bright, pulsing red. "The core," Rhys said, gripping his blade tighter. "She's got a backup organ. It's regenerating her." Kira stepped back slowly, eyes wide. "That's not possible." "It is now," Rhys growled. "Get the child out of here." The jungle shook again, louder, sharper. The queen's chest split open with a wet crack, and black smoke hissed out like a dying volcano. From inside rose a second set of limbs, thinner, faster, covered in sharper bone. She wasn't just recovering, she was evolving. Rhys barely had time to leap back before a new claw sliced the air where he stood. Kira grabbed the little alien girl and ran, stumbling through the brush, her heart racing behind her. Rhys let out a battle cry, half pain, half fury, as the queen's new form struck him across the back. He rolled, grabbed a broken spear from the ground, and launched it at her glowing chest. It hit, but didn't sink. Her armor was thicker now, her speed faster, her rage unmatched. Rhys stood again, blood pouring from his shoulder, and wiped his face with a snarl. "You just don't quit, do you?" He muttered. The queen lunged, jaws wide. But Rhys ducked and drove a bone blade into her side, then twisted, then ripped. She screamed, a sound that made even the trees shake in fear. But she didn't fall. Instead, she slammed him into a tree, trunk so hard it cracked in half. Rhys groaned, crawling to his knees, his bones screaming with every move. Kira screamed his name from the trees, but he didn't respond. He pushed himself up again, shaking, eyes unfocused, but still burning with fire. She came again, faster, but this time Rhys didn't dodge. He ran toward her. Kira gasped as Rhys dived beneath her body, rolling into a pit he had set earlier. The queen followed, stepping straight into the trap. Metal shards burst from the ground like spikes, piercing her legs and lower body. Pinning her in place, she roared, thrashing wildly, but Rhys climbed her like a wall of rage, bone blade gripped. In both hands, he climbed to her back, shoved his arm between her armored plates, sand stabbed deep. The glowing red core pulsed once, twice, then burst. The queen let out one final, shattering scream, then collapsed. Her limbs stopped twitching, her breath faded, and her eyes, once filled with fury, dimmed to nothing. Kira ran to him, eyes wet with fear and relief. Reese sat beside the corpse, coughing blood, his body wrecked. But his hands still gripped the blade. "It's over," Kira whispered. Falling to her knees, Reese nodded slowly. She won't come back again. The jungle had changed. The fear that once lived in the wind was gone. Birds returned to the trees, distant howls softened, and sunlight poured through the shattered canopy. Kira looked around in disbelief. "You did it. You ended her reign." Reese didn't smile. He just looked at the body, then said, "Now it's just a jungle again. No monsters, no rulers, just life trying to grow again." That night, they buried the queen beneath the roots of a massive tree, not out of respect, but to mark the end. Kira sat by the fire with the alien child in her arms, watching Reese stitch his wounds with bone needles and thin vine thread. "You should be dead," she said, more than once. Reese chuckled weakly. "I probably will be tomorrow." She shook her head. "No, you're not dying, Reese." "Why not?" he asked. "Because we need you," she replied, her voice firm. "Not just me or her, but others. They'll come, and they'll need someone like you." Reese looked into the fire, then said, "Then I'll stay alive a little longer." And in the shadows of the jungle, something new stirred, not fear, but hope. The jungle was alive again, but it was no longer angry, no longer ruled by death. Birds sang from the trees, light danced through the broken canopy, and small animals crept from hiding to sniff the open paths. Kira stood at the edge of the clearing, watching it all. It was beautiful now, but it wasn't what made her chest tighten. It was him. Reese walked slowly across the ground where the Queen of Fangs had fallen. His wounds were healing, barely, and his steps were slower than before. But he was alive, and the jungle knew it. Everything gave him space. Even the trees seemed to lean away when he passed, not because of fear, but because he had earned their respect. Kira looked down at the small alien girl clutching her hand. "She's still quiet," Kira said softly. "But she's not afraid anymore." Reese nodded from a few steps away. "Good. She wants to stay with us," Kira added. "She follows you around like a shadow." "I'm not good with kids," he said, tying a new strap around his shoulder. "She trusts you," Kira said. "So do I." Reese didn't answer. Just looked out toward the jungle horizon, where smoke from wrecked camps still rose in the distance. "Others will come here," he finally said. "Now that the queen is gone, this world will be marked for settlement." Kira nodded. "I know." Reese looked at her. "And they'll bring warships, machines, weapons more than this place has ever seen." Kira frowned. "You think they'll ruin it?" Reese gave a tired smile. "If there's one thing humans do better than survive, it's take over." She walked up beside him, her voice softer now. "So what will you do?" "I'll stay," he said, "for now, alone." She asked. He turned his head toward her, eyes calm. "That depends on you." Later that night, as stars began to fill the sky, Kira sat beside him at the fire, her thoughts heavy. She looked at the scars on his arms, the bandages across his chest, the tired lines around his eyes. He looked like a warrior, but he never called himself one. "Why did you save me?" she asked suddenly. Reese didn't move for a moment, then said, "Because you were worth saving." She shook her head. "You didn't even know me." "You screamed," he said. That was enough. She stared at him, her throat tight. "You're not what I expected from a human." He raised an eyebrow. "What did you expect?" "Ruthless," she admitted. "Cold, selfish, angry. I was taught your kind were monsters." Reese poked the fire with a stick, letting the flames crackle louder. "Maybe some are," he said, "but monsters don't cry for fallen friends. And they don't bury the creatures they kill." She smiled a little. "You buried the queen." "I didn't hate her," he said. "She was what she was. Strong, deadly, but not evil. He looked at Kira now, and his voice dropped. It's what people do with power that makes them monsters. She nodded slowly, letting his words sink in. Then, what are you? She whispered. Reese didn't answer. Right away, then said, I'm just a man who stood up when no one else did. Days passed. They rebuilt part of the cave, turned it into a safe shelter, and planted roots near the stream. Kira hunted for fruit while Reese made traps and defenses. The little alien girl whom they now called Tali drew pictures in the dirt, often of Reese standing beside a giant beast, sometimes with fire, sometimes with stars. Kira watched her draw one night and whispered, She thinks you're a hero, Reese chuckled. Heroes are people who don't bleed. She saw you bleed, Kira said. And that's why she calls you one. He looked up at her slowly, then said, Are you staying? Kira stared at him, the stars reflecting in her eyes. She had ships now rescue beacons repaired, away off this planet. But the truth was, she didn't want to leave. Not anymore. I came here scared of everything, she said. Now I feel more alive than ever, even with monsters around. He asked. She smiled, especially because of one. He blinked, then smirked softly. You calling me the monster now? No, she whispered. You're what monsters fear. In time, other ships would come, and when they did, they'd hear stories. About the Queen of Fangs, about the jungle that fought back, and about the man who didn't run. Some would come to challenge him, some to recruit him. But Kira knew one thing none would leave unchanged, because once you looked into Reese's eyes, once, you saw what humanity really was beneath the soft voice and quiet hands. You'd never forget it, and like her, you might just choose to follow him too.